It was the summer of 2019, and I had just moved to a small town in Pennsylvania for a new job. The town was quaint and charming, with tree-lined streets and friendly neighbors. I had always lived in the city, so the change of pace was a welcome one. I found a cozy little house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by dense woods. It was the perfect escape from the hustle and bustle I was used to. The first few weeks were uneventful. I spent my days at work and my evenings unpacking and settling into my new home. One night, as I was sitting on my porch, I noticed a faint rustling in the woods. It was probably just a deer or some other wildlife, I thought. But then, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the trees, partially obscured by the shadows. My heart skipped a beat, and I squinted, trying to get a better look. The figure stood still, watching me. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. There was no response. The figure turned and disappeared into the darkness. I sat there for a few moments, trying to convince myself that it was just my imagination. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The next day at work, I mentioned the incident to a co-worker, Sarah. She was a lifelong resident of the town and knew all the local legends and stories. "That's strange," she said, her brow furrowing. "There have been rumors of someone living in the woods, but no one has ever seen them up close." "Living in the woods?" I repeated, feeling a knot of unease in my stomach. "Yeah, some people say it's a hermit. Others say it's something more sinister, but it's probably just an old wives' tale," she said, trying to reassure me. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Over the next few weeks, the sightings continued. I would catch glimpses of the figure in the woods, always watching, never approaching. It was starting to take a toll on my nerves. I installed security cameras around my property, hoping to catch whoever or whatever was out there. One night, as I was reviewing the footage, I saw it. The figure was standing just beyond the tree line, staring directly at the camera. It was a man, tall and thin, with wild, unkempt hair and a gaunt face. His eyes were hollow, almost lifeless. I felt a surge of fear and anger. This had to stop. I took the footage to the local police department. The officer on duty, Officer Daniels, was skeptical, but agreed to send a patrol car to check the area. "We'll keep an eye out, but there isn't much we can do without more evidence," he said, handing the footage back to me. I left the station feeling frustrated and helpless. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak and rustle outside my window made my heart race. Around midnight, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps on my porch. I grabbed a flashlight and cautiously made my way to the front door. Peering through the peephole, I saw nothing. The footsteps stopped, and the silence was deafening. I decided to open the door and shine the flashlight around. As soon as I did, I saw the man standing at the edge of my porch, his eyes fixed on me. "Who are you? What do you want?" I shouted, my voice cracking with fear. He didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked into the woods. I slammed the door shut and called the police again. This time, they took me seriously and sent 2 officers to my house. They searched the area but found no trace of the man. For the next few days, I was on high alert. I barely slept, and every shadow seemed menacing. One evening, I came home from work to find my front door ajar. My heart pounded as I stepped inside, calling out to see if anyone was there. The house was eerily silent. I walked through each room, my hands shaking. When I reached the bedroom, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, on my bed, was a Polaroid photo of me sleeping, taken from inside my house. I felt a wave of nausea and fear. How had he gotten inside? I called the police again, and this time they brought in a forensic team. They dusted for fingerprints and searched for any clues, but they found nothing. Officer Daniels pulled me aside. "Listen, we're doing everything we can, but you might want to consider staying somewhere else for a while," he said, his tone serious. I nodded, feeling defeated. That night, I packed a bag and went to stay with Sarah. She was kind enough to offer her spare room, and I was grateful for the company. But even there, I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. One night, as Sarah and I were having dinner, there was a loud knock at the door. We both jumped, and she went to answer it. I heard her talking to someone, and then she called for me. When I reached the door, I saw Officer Daniels standing there, looking grim. "We caught him," he said. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. He was living in an old cabin deep in the woods. We found a lot of disturbing stuff in there. Photos, journals. He was obsessed with you. My stomach churned as he handed me a small notebook. I opened it and saw my name scrawled across the pages, along with detailed notes about my daily routine. There were even more photos, taken from various angles around my house. I felt violated, exposed. "He's being taken in for psychiatric evaluation," Officer Daniels continued. "But you should know he claimed he wasn't alone out there." I stared at him, my mind racing. "What do you mean?" He kept saying there were others, watching, waiting. "We didn't find anyone else, but it's something to keep in mind." That night, I tried to sleep, but the thought of others lurking in the woods kept me awake. The man was caught, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The woods seemed darker, more sinister. I eventually moved away from that town, back to the city where the lights and noise felt safer. But even now, years later, I can't help but glance over my shoulder, fearing that someone, somewhere, is watching, waiting. It's a fear that never truly goes away. It all started innocuously enough. I was just a regular guy, living a quiet life in a small town in Pennsylvania. My name is Jason, and I was a 28-year-old accountant, single and living alone in a modest apartment. My life was uneventful, and that's how I liked it. Little did I know, that was all about to change. One evening, I was sitting on my couch, flipping through channels on the TV. The autumn wind howled outside, and the leaves rustled against the window panes. I remember glancing at the clock. It was 9:45 p.m. I decided to call it a night, heading to bed early as I had a big meeting the next day. As I was about to switch off the TV, my phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. "Hello, Jason." I frowned. I didn't recognize the number. Thinking it was a wrong number, I ignored it and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to find another message from the same number. "Did you sleep well?" A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't a wrong number. Someone knew me. Someone was watching me. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease and went about my day, but the thought lingered at the back of my mind. Over the next few days, the messages kept coming. They were never threatening, but they were unsettling. "I like your blue shirt." "Nice haircut." "I saw you at the coffee shop." Each message was a reminder that someone was out there, observing my every move. I didn't know who it was or what they wanted. I started looking over my shoulder wherever I went. I told my friends and family about it, but they shrugged it off, saying it was probably a prank. One night, as I was returning home from work, I had the distinct feeling of being followed. I quickened my pace, glancing back every few seconds. The streets were deserted, but the feeling of eyes on me was undeniable. I finally reached my apartment building and rushed inside, slamming the door behind me. My heart was pounding in my chest. I stood there for a moment, catching my breath, when my phone buzzed again. "You looked scared." "Don't be." That was it. I called the police. They took my statement and assured me they would look into it. But deep down, I knew there wasn't much they could do without more information. Days turned into weeks, and the messages continued. Sometimes there would be a lull, and I would start to relax, thinking it was over. But then, like clockwork, another message would appear. "I miss our chats." It was driving me insane. I started isolating myself, avoiding going out unless absolutely necessary. My work began to suffer, and my social life was non-existent. I was living in a state of constant paranoia. Every creak, every shadow, every unexpected sound set me on edge. Then, one night, the messages took a darker turn. "I'm closer than you think." I bolted my doors and windows, double-checking every lock. I even started sleeping with a kitchen knife under my pillow. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. It was a cold, rainy night when the climax of my ordeal occurred. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Reluctantly, I picked it up and read the message. "I'm inside your house." My blood ran cold. I froze, listening for any sound that might indicate an intruder. Nothing. Just the steady patter of rain against the windows. Then, I heard it. A faint creak from downstairs. I grabbed the knife from under my pillow and quietly got out of bed. My heart was pounding so loudly, I was sure it would give me away. I crept down the stairs, knife in hand, every step agonizingly slow. As I reached the bottom, I heard another creak, this time from the kitchen. I mustered all my courage and burst into the room, flipping on the light. Empty. The room was empty. I was about to let out a sigh of relief when I felt a presence behind me. I spun around, and there, in the doorway, stood a man. He was tall, with a gaunt face and hollow eyes. He grinned at me, a chilling, predatory grin. "Hello, Jason," he said, his voice low and menacing. I didn't think. I just acted. I lunged at him with the knife, but he was quicker. He grabbed my wrist, twisting it until I dropped the knife. He shoved me against the wall, pinning me there with surprising strength. "Why are you doing this?" I gasped, struggling against his grip. He leaned in close, his breath hot and foul against my face. "Because I can." He threw me to the ground, and I scrambled to my feet, backing away. He advanced slowly, savoring my fear. Just as he was about to reach me, the sound of sirens filled the air. The police had arrived. He hesitated, glancing toward the front door. Taking advantage of his distraction, I ran to the door and flung it open, yelling for help. The police stormed in, and the man made a run for it. They chased him down, tackling him to the ground outside. As they handcuffed him and led him away, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was finally over. The police found out that he had been stalking me for months, watching my every move, breaking into my house when I wasn't there. He had a long history of stalking and had been arrested before, but somehow, he always found his way back to his victims. It took me a long time to recover from that night. The fear, the paranoia, it all lingered. But eventually, with the support of friends and family, I managed to piece my life back together. I moved to a new town, got a new job, and slowly started to rebuild my sense of security. I'll never forget the terror of being stalked, of knowing that someone was out there, watching my every move. It's a feeling that stays with you, lurking in the shadows of your mind. But I'm stronger now, more cautious. I've learned to be vigilant, to trust my instincts. And most importantly, I've learned that no matter how quiet and uneventful your life may seem, it can change in an instant. Evil can be closer than you think. I had never believed in the supernatural or the idea that evil could manifest itself in everyday life until the summer of 2019. My name is Jack, and I was just an average guy, living in a small town in the Midwest, trying to make ends meet while working a mundane job at a local grocery store. Life was uneventful until the day I encountered the stalker. It all began one warm evening in July. I had finished my shift at the store and was walking home. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the quiet streets. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I turned around several times, but there was no one there. I shrugged it off as paranoia and continued on my way. A few days later, the feeling returned. This time I was in my backyard, mowing the lawn. I felt eyes on me, watching my every move. Again, I looked around and saw nothing out of the ordinary. The sensation was unnerving, but I tried to ignore it. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard faint tapping on my window. My heart raced as I got up to investigate. I pulled back the curtain, expecting to see a tree branch or something harmless. Instead, I saw a figure standing just beyond the glass, staring at me with wide, unblinking eyes. The face was obscured by darkness, but the outline was unmistakable. Someone was there, watching me. I stumbled back, my mind racing. I grabbed my phone and called the police. They arrived within minutes, but found no trace of the intruder. They told me it was probably a prank, some local kids trying to scare me. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. The next few weeks were a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. The feeling of being watched never left me. I started noticing small things out of place around my house. Items would be moved, doors left open, and strange footprints in the dirt outside my windows. I installed security cameras, hoping to catch the stalker in the act, but they always managed to evade detection. One night, I woke up to the sound of my front door creaking open. My heart pounded as I reached for the baseball bat I kept under my bed. I crept downstairs, trying to be as silent as possible. As I reached the bottom step, I saw a shadow move across the hallway. I swung the bat, but it connected with nothing but air. The figure had vanished, leaving only a chilling silence behind. I called the police again, but they found no evidence of a break-in. They started to doubt my story, suggesting that stress and lack of sleep were playing tricks on my mind. Friends and family began to distance themselves, thinking I was losing my grip on reality. Desperate for answers, I started doing my own investigation. I scoured the internet for stories of similar experiences and visited local libraries, hoping to find any clues about who or what was tormenting me. One evening, while searching through old newspapers, I stumbled upon an article about a man who had been stalking people in our town decades ago. He would watch them for weeks, sometimes months, before finally breaking into their homes. The article ended with a chilling detail. The stalker was never caught. A shiver ran down my spine. Could it be the same person? Was he back to finish what he had started? The thought was terrifying, but it also gave me a sense of purpose. I needed to find this man and put an end to the nightmare. The following days were filled with paranoia. I barely left my house, spending most of my time watching the security footage and setting traps around my property. One night, as I reviewed the footage, I finally caught a glimpse of the stalker. He was standing in the shadows, just out of reach of the cameras, watching me. The sight sent a chill down my spine, but it also fueled my determination. I decided to confront him. I stayed up all night, waiting for him to make his move. As the hours ticked by, I felt my resolve waver. But just as dawn approached, I heard the familiar creak of the front door. I tightened my grip on the bat and made my way downstairs. The living room was dark, but I could see the outline of a figure standing by the window. I flipped the light switch, illuminating the room. The stalker was there, his face twisted into a sinister grin. He took a step towards me, but I swung the bat with all my might, hitting him square in the chest. He fell to the ground, gasping for breath. For a moment, I stood frozen, unable to believe what had just happened. Then, I called the police. This time, they arrived quickly and took the man into custody. As they led him away, he turned to me and whispered, "This isn't over." The words haunted me for days. Even though the stalker was behind bars, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I moved out of town, hoping to leave the nightmare behind. But even now, as I write this, I can feel eyes on me. The terror may never truly end, but I refuse to let it control my life.